everybody, and welcome to the Makers of Minnesota podcast. I'm Stephanie Hansen here with Nalini Mehta, and she is the founder of Yoga Pops. And Yoga Pops are a treat that I've been hearing about for the last couple of years. So I'm excited to finally get the opportunity to meet you. They are popped water lily seeds with 4 grams of plant protein, and they are all different types of flavors. And Nalini, I need you to explain a yoga pop to me, because for people that don't know, I think it's hard to understand what a water lily seed is.
Sure. Thank you first for having me, Steph.
Absolutely.
While you probably remember the 2 years of being here in Minnesota, I actually know and have met you 4 years ago when we did this very interesting collaboration with artists and chefs at the Textile Museum.
Yes, yes, yes.
So yes, so what Yoga Pops is, it's if you can imagine maybe the texture of popcorn or Doritos, something that's crunchy, and yet it's really just medicine in our culture. So it's a great postnatal care medicine. Kids love it. Kids are given it as we were growing up as a snack, which is what it is. But here in Minnesota or Minneapolis, it started as a bar snack. We were
Okay.
serving it, and that's when I go back to the 2018 reference when we did that textile museum. I was introduced to Minneapolis at that time because I was here on a James Beard grant program for women chefs, and I've always dreamed to have a restaurant, and yet kind of been hesitant. It was a dream, but I wasn't sure if it could turn very quickly into a nightmare.
Yeah, sometimes it does. It's such a demanding, cash infused hours and stressful type of position.
Absolutely. I think it's for me, one, of course, just food. I was driven by food all my life, but also the connections that you make while you're in that space, and the nourishment and the excitement and the just how your senses come alive in that small platform that you create through food. So that's what brought me to Minneapolis. I was working with a very well-known restaurateur here who had 10 restaurants at that time. And I was serving this during our Ayurvedic pop-up dinners to showcase the importance of connecting with those back of the house and in front of the house. The pop-ups were based on, everything I do is based out of our ancient culture of Ayurveda.
Can you explain that? Because I
Yeah,
think there's a lot to that, and I think that
there
drives you
is,
so much.
there is, and I'll kind of break it down slowly but surely through our entire conversation today. But if the reason I was there was really to bring wellness to the back of the house, the kitchen culture, so to speak. That we all like good food, but do we really connect with the person who's bringing it all on to the plate? We can have the most grass-fed, organic, all those lovely words, but if the person who's making and bringing it onto our plate is not in a good mental place, how can we not be impacted by it? So what is the dollar value of a happy chef, really? That's what really made me start this. But interestingly, going back to Yoga Pops, people were like, they were just waiting to get seated, and we were serving this at the bar, whether it was beer or wine, different flavors, and they wanted to take it back home in takeout containers. And the restaurateur who brought me was my mentor, Kim Bachman. Some of us know her.
Yes, very well.
Yeah. So she said, "So why can't you package it?" I was like, "No, anything that's packaged has preservatives. It's all for all this." But she's got the smarts in many ways.
Yes.
And she said, "Well, this doesn't have any preservatives. and it doesn't, you're not doing anything to it, but barely just spicing it up, and putting chef crafty flavors to it. So what's wrong with it? And my partner, who's also a co-founder at Proud to India, which is our company, who I've been with for 25 years now, she was always keen that I package my food more so that she could have a retirement strategy. So she was like, okay, you never heard me, but now maybe you can listen to your mentor and get this off the ground. And really, that was a good start to it. But remember, my dream was to start a restaurant.
Yeah.
But in that 1 year of being in the grant program, I really felt, and this is pre Anthony Bourdain days, where we knew that there was something amiss in the kitchen, but we were not, and I just didn't feel that it was, I don't know if we still are, it's still a growing, it is a much more, there's more awareness around it, but yeah, the kitchen culture continues to be a place where I feel we can bring much more wellness before we can say we are foodies and, you know, really enjoy that experience, but with some much more awareness of what it takes to bring good food to the table.
Yeah, it is kind of funny when you look at it in that perspective, because we see food as community, we see food as culture, we see food as this like nourishing home, family, loving experience. Yet what we learned prior to the pandemic, and certainly during the pandemic, was the front and back of the house and the way that the many restaurant cultures were evolving, that wasn't the forefront, and that wasn't the way that the workers felt. You know, that hospitalitarianism is a creative profession, and yet they weren't nourishing their spirits. And we're sort of in a reckoning now with that. What does the new restaurant culture look like?
So true.
We're seeing things like, obviously, shorter work weeks. So people are closing 2 days a week instead of 1 day a week. We're seeing people that are only doing dinner service and not doing breakfast, lunch, and dinner service. We're seeing people that might have 2 head chefs or 2 co-chefs versus, you know, 1 person. And also we're seeing more emphasis on tipping culture, living wage, also more plant-based, more sustainability, all these things that we're bubbling up, and I think we're getting sorted out slowly, but that's the pandemic sort of lit a fire under all that.
So true. So true. Yeah, that really is what brought me to this whole world of Minneapolis and food. So that's how Yoga Pop started. But you know, part of our profits still go back to the wellness of chefs. So it's called the Happy Chef Project, where we, again, based on Ayurveda and yoga, and again, your Ayurveda, as you were asking me about earlier, if you think about what Ayurveda is, it's really the yoga of food in many ways. At least for me, it has a much broader perspective. But I would say for me, it was always food driven, because not only does it look at food as medicine, but it also takes it further. It looks at you as an individual, unique, and what your needs are very different from another person. So it's really based on the energetics of what you are, your environment is, and what the food does to balance it out.
So we have different types of yoga, and I know very little about this, but there's like hatha and vinyasa. And what I'm hearing you say is that Ayurveda is a type of yoga, but that for you, it's sort of rooted in food culture.
So yoga and Ayurveda came together at the same time around 3,000, 5,000 years ago. They were sister sciences that came about. So if you think of yoga, it's all about the body and the mind and the spirit, which Ayurveda is as well, but it's more about how to, you know, take herbs and balance your body.
Okay.
So, or you know, so it's very connected to Ayurveda. In fact, to yoga, if you think of it, it's really a sister science. And so therefore also, I think for us, we have to be very targeted on who is that person who's going to buy Yoga Pops. It's, you know, it's often we would question about the name, because people will think, oh, it's yogurt, or is it popsicle? What is it? And really, we stuck with the name and the branding primarily because it's the yoga mamas. It is moms in general who want to feed their kids well. It's those of us who want to feel satiated in a small bite, and not get hungry, but have something that can make us feel good and yet be medicine.
I see. So almost like it's not a separate thing, it's a continuation of the wellness of your body based on what the food is that you put in your body to give you those feelings of wholesome and well-being.
100%. So if somebody has been practicing, and I use the word practice, with which we can talk about a little bit more later, but if you think of those of us who've been practicing yoga and found some level of this, wow, there's something which makes you feel centered and balanced, then if you think of how that can translate into your relationships or with food or with nature, that's what Ayurveda is. So most of the people who come to me would first have experienced yoga and then said, okay, now I want to know more about what's more. Tell me more.
Yeah, because I think, and maybe in America this is a thing, or maybe just in where, we were exposed to yoga as like a wellness and a activity, like a sports activity, like pickleball. You take pickleball or you do yoga. And what
Yeah.
people, it's more of a lifestyle choice, and it's more about a whole way of being, which brings me back to your product, because you're trying to convey that in your flavors, in the packaging, everything about it looks really soothing. And is it hard to launch a product like this in the United States versus if you had launched it, or in Minnesota in particular, if you had launched it in California, where there's maybe more emphasis on wellness and wholeness? I don't know.
So interesting that you asked this question. Well, so as I mentioned to you, the concept was conceived here. It is, I wanted to be in the restaurant space. I wanted to connect with people. Packaging is not what I thought, but I am driven aesthetically, as by the way you are, because when you did that questionnaire that I sent you, you are definitely a creative personality first, and then a fire personality.
Yeah, that would not surprise me.
That makes sense. I would have thought you're more fiery first and then airy, but no, you're first creative and then fiery. So something has to drive you creatively, and then you will push it forward.
Yeah.
Where and most of us in the chef world or the food world tend to be that. But think of a manager or a corporate person. They are fiery first. They want to lead. That is the next thing about Ayurveda was it's so beautiful in how it defines you. So we're now hearing all these things about personalized medicine, but it looked at personalized food way before any of this came through. So going back to your question about packaging, we had to be first the name, because during my pop-up dinners people would say, so what is Ayurveda? Because we have invited people to come for these pop-up dinners based on the same questionnaire that you filled, and did a prefix menu based on who they are. So if you were a fiery personality, the menu would be very cooling and calming. So it's a prefix menu based on your dosha.
That's cool. Do you still do those?
Yes, we haven't really started after the pandemic, but I think we will. As you just went to one of my friends, we've done a few, the ones that you'll know with Chef Nick, for example, at the Lex. That's where he was with the St. Bartman group at that point, and we were doing dinners out of the Bird at Loring Park.
Yep.
And so we've done it with him, with Raghavan.
Sure.
We did through his book. So, I mean, even with your book, right? You would say, what's the Ayurveda connection? But it doesn't have to be you don't have to be Indian to do yoga. You don't have to be saying Om or Namaste to do.
Correct.
Same for Ayurveda. It's more, it's seasonal forward. It's plant forward. It's seasonally driven. It's then connecting to who you are based on what you should eat and balancing who you are. And so even as we looked at packaging, we were like, should we shy away from, is this too complex? Is this too much to be all said on a packaging?
And to tie back to a snack.
Exactly. It's easy, you know, when I would do these dinners to talk about it, to talk about how food is connected to what's happening behind the kitchen, to connect. It was really, it's always, and I'm going to do this hopefully in the next couple of months, you'll see another pop-up dinner back with the Ayurveda theme.
I hope I can come.
Of course you'll come.
I love this idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it was always, it intrigues everybody. Like, okay, so you've done this questionnaire, and how will this, what does that mean for you in terms of food? We'd never have a no-show. Even before social media, we were doing these in New York City 20 years ago, and people from all walks of life would just find us and say, I want to know how Ayurveda works. Like, if you've had some yoga experience, which, like you said, California and New York started a little earlier than here, but people who had done yoga for a couple of years just gravitate to what Ayurveda is. Now, of course, you hear of turmeric lattes, and you hear of all these things, that Ayurveda is definitely what yoga was in the late 90s.
You seem very early on in the emerging trend space, because we're seeing food as medicine, and the idea of making food, what do they call them? They're not nutraceuticals, they're not pharmaceuticals, they're foodaceuticals.
Nice, I like that. Yeah, like that. But they call it pharmacology in many ways, because, you know, it's kitchen pharmacy.
Yeah.
With a pharmacy.
Yes. Okay. So I get that. So you have this snack, and it's based in your culture and your holistic approach to how you want to treat people, be treated, how you want to complete the body, mind, food connection. But then, like, you have to raise money, and you have to go to the people at Target and say, will you carry my Yoga Pops? How has that journey been from a business side? Has it been hard for you, because you're reestablishing a whole new category?
Honestly, it has been hard. But every time there was a hard obstacle, somebody would make it so meaningful. You know how it is with small business or emerging trends, or I guess what it is, I'd say I've been doing this for 20 years. There have several obstacles, but I was also obstinate. I just would not give up, because I have seen miracles. I've seen food was always my driving force. But a little bit of backstory about my childhood. I think the two things that really drove me, one was my crawling path was determined by the smells, the aromas of my mother's kitchen. And later on, as a rebel, going against everything she wanted me to eat, to go eat street food in India. And then, just food was driving. So you have to have a certain drive. But then, as you know, it's the challenges in life that kind of make you feel more, they shape you. I always say, you know, my journey of food has been that I got baked along the way. I had to get baked. It's hard. So all those hard points or challenges really solidified my belief in this, so to speak. And then I would say I've been inspired. I've had such amazing teachers and mentors who have really said, they've been my support. You know, you need that inspiration. So two things I'd say that really drive me, and I think anybody who does something, is either some hard experiences, life-changing experiences, and two, something that you can say drives you with passion and with inspiration.
So can you talk a little bit about the flavors of Yoga Pops and where you come up with these ideas? So the one I have on my desk here is tandoori masala, but there were other flavors too. Can you just describe why you picked the flavors that you did?
For sure, yeah. You know, the first flavor was our curry dusted, because we would do these pop-up dinners, and we had at that time a French chef who really enjoyed my flavors, and he was just toasting them with me. You know, I love these collaborations when somebody has no clue, but then because of the techniques, you know, like Chef Nick was just like, I'm going to do this, because he had worked with saffron and he'd worked with Samay.
Yep.
And he was like, I'm going to take this to not, they take their chefiness and they want to take.
Yeah.
So we did curry dusted first because of what I brought to their kitchens. And then they elevated it and made it very chefy. That was the first flavor. But then we wanted something that was sweeter, just the opposite. And so again, very rooted in our tradition. The sweet flavor is not sugar, it's caramel, jaggery. Jaggery is nothing but dehydrated cane juice.
Okay.
So it's actually fed to newborn, to mothers, as well as, so it's really a postnatal care, in that it's a liver, it helps liver health.
Yeah.
No, not all sugars are bad. It's the processing of the sugar that kills it. So
well, not unlike a honey or a maple syrup is usually a lower glycemic index and a little better for you than just a straight.
Not just little better for you. I think if you look at kids, if they don't get it, sugar helps them grow their cells. So it's not wrong for them to want sugar. It's what sugar we give them. So
yeah.
Like maple syrup is amazing, right? It's just tapped into the bark of the tree and you have this delicious syrup. So those cane juice, it's beautiful. So in these winter months, for example, talk about how we bring Ayurveda into our product. When I was looking at this, I was doing these pop-ups in the cold of January, and I wanted to bring something that was sweeter flavored that people could enjoy with their coffee. So while the first one was a bar snack for, let's say, people with the curry flavor goes really well with beer, or our truffle flavor goes really well with wine. So all of those connections were made much later, because I barely can even talk about drinking. That's not my forte, but
yeah,
people would tell me, oh, this really tastes good. It just tingles my taste buds and such. So caramel came about for that reason, because we wanted something sweet, but I could not stand behind something that was processed. So then we did this caramel jaggery, which actually has a molasses kind of depth of flavor. And then we added cardamom to it, and cloves and cinnamon. So all those winter warming flavors. And really looked at how Ayurveda would offer it in winter months, when it's bitterly cold, as we use the word bitter, which is a taste. We offer something which is again the opposite, like in yoga. What is the opposite of bitter?
Sweet.
So it's a natural gravitation to the opposite. You balance. The big principle in Ayurveda is you balance with the opposite. So if you're a fiery personality, you eat cooling foods. If you're a grounded personality, that's a very earthy personality, then you eat foods that perk you up, because otherwise it's so sedentary. You need something to kind of lift you up and make you feel lighter. Or if you're an air and creative personality like us, you eat foods that ground us. So it's the opposite that balances. So in the winter months, eating sweet, or during Valentine's, it's these flavors that we want. So it's a very intuitive way of flavors, but it is also very well, it's a mathematical, logical formula that if it is cold and it is drying, then you eat foods that are warming and giving you moisture.
I want you to have a restaurant, I've decided.
Oh.
Because
we'll do a pop-up, and then we'll talk more about that.
Yes.
Yeah, as long as it's not a nightmare, I'm still living that dream.
Because I feel like, you can get this in the Yoga Pop snack, but this is much more than a snack food for you or a CPG product. It's really a lifestyle that you are introducing, and concepts about wellness and wholeness and kindness, like that all does kind of translate to the experience of being a hospitality person in a restaurant setting. So I guess that's a story for another day, right?
I know, it's when I also teach cooking classes. That's how I started.
And where do you teach them at?
Through the pandemic, online. But
sure.
I was in New York, and there's this amazing school called the Natural Gourmet, which now transitioned and moved to another space. But I started Route to India really as a culinary school. for Ayurveda. And so we were in California, moved from New York after being there for 15 years to San Francisco. And people were, just starting off with this whole buzz of Silicon Valley, of taking pictures. That was 2010 at that time. So they were taking pictures and getting distracted. And, I couldn't teach a cooking class where everybody's distracted.
Yeah.
So I would, I've been teaching meditation for over 12 years now. And I would do this, have them sit and do a 10-minute meditation. That would change. It was my hypnosis. It was really transformational because then they were focused on doing what they're doing, much more at ease with being in the kitchen. And then their taste buds were also much more available to them.
Right.
So it was like, what just happened? We just, it was such a lovely time because it really made me realize, which is the basic premise of when you cook with Ayurveda, is you cook with awareness, but it's not as if it happens. It's that joy of being in the moment. So I call it meditation in motion.
I love it. So Yoga Pops, the snack, where can people buy them right now?
So you can buy it at the Wedge. You can buy it off our website. We are in conversation with Kowalski.
Yep.
But it's, it's funny. It took off in Minneapolis, but it's now in Erewhon in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be in Texas, in HEB very soon. It's in Myers, and also in Hy-Vee, a couple of Hy-Vees here. So it's, I think Minneapolis and Target, we were just part of the Target Accelerator, but I think we need a year more before we.
Yes.
But yeah.
And then if people want to learn more about you and your pop-ups, is there a place you would direct them or your cooking classes?
Yeah, just our website, Route to India.
Okay. Well, I am thrilled to meet you. I am hopeful to spend more time with you in the next year at some dinner or doing something, because you're really very interesting, and I'm very inspired by the way that you're thinking about food. I think there's a lot ahead for you.
I so loved our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much. We will talk soon.
Bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.